You know, whenever we pop a pill or use a new medical device, it's easy to forget what it took to get there. Clinical trials are literally the backbone of modern medicine. Every single treatment we rely on had to go through this incredibly rigorous, structured process just to prove it's safe and actually works. But have you ever wondered who's actually on the ground, behind that multi-million-dollar enterprise, making sure the science is totally sound and the patients are safe? Well, that's the Clinical Research Coordinator, or CRC. Let's dive right into this explainer and explore the really fascinating high-stakes world of the CRC. They are, without a doubt, the true linchpin of clinical research.
Just like a flawlessly executed clinical trial, we've got a strict protocol to follow today. First up, the trial linchpin. Then we'll move into screening and informed consent. Cover the golden rules of data. Bridge source and EDC. Navigate data queries, and wrap up with principal investigator oversight.
All right, Section 1, the clinical trial linchpin, managing the front lines of research. Managing these front lines takes a really unique set of skills. You've kind of got to be this empathetic patient guide while also being a ruthless protector of data integrity all at once. And honestly, for anyone stepping into this dual-natured role on day one, the pressure can feel pretty intense. There's actually this great survival mantra for new CRCs from our sources that I just love. It goes, your job today is not to save the world, it's to find the restroom, learn people's names, and absorb the landscape. It perfectly sets a practical tone, right? Success early on is really about making connections, not just checking off tasks. You're shifting your entire mindset from being a student to actually owning these critical research operations.
Moving on to Section 2, Screening and Informed Consent, the human element of research.
Now, this is where the human element of research really shines through. Because informed consent, it's an ongoing process. It is definitely not just handing someone a form to sign. Listen to this vivid anecdote from a veteran CRC. They said, "I keep a box of tissues in the consent room." That moment of humanity builds immense trust, which is the bedrock of retention. You know, sometimes the sheer weight of a diagnosis or hearing all the potential risks makes people really emotional. Giving them that space and a tissue is way more important than just rushing to get a signature. It just completely captures the profound empathy you need for this job.
So how does the CRC actually execute this? Well, our sources break the informed consent discussion down into 3 specific steps. First, you need the right environment. We're talking a private, quiet room where you can dedicate a solid 30 to 60 minutes. Second is the introduction, where you clearly explain that the whole purpose of this chat is to make sure they can make an informed, totally voluntary choice. And third, the guided review. Again, no just handing them a 20-page document, you actually walk them through the sections in plain, everyday language, summarizing the risks, the benefits, and the procedures. And absolutely all of this has to happen before any study-specific procedures take place.
Section 3, the golden rules of data, guarding scientific integrity.
Okay, we're shifting gears now. We're moving from that empathetic human element into the cold, hard, scientific rigidity that kicks in the exact second a trial visit begins. Because in clinical research, if it wasn't documented, it literally didn't happen. The data is the currency of the research, so it has to be completely, irrefutably traceable. Which brings us to the source document. What is it? Basically, it's the very first permanent record of a fact or observation where clinical findings are initially recorded. The exact moment data moves from a doctor's brain, or say, a machine's display, onto a record, that record becomes the source. It might be a messy, handwritten vital sign sheet, a lab printout, or an electronic medical record. Whatever it is, it's the absolute bedrock of all clinical trial data.
And to make sure that source documentation is flawless, CRCs live and die by an international standard for data quality known as Alcoa plus CC. Think of this as their ultimate daily checklist. Every piece of data must be attributable, like who actually recorded it. It has to be legible. Could someone read this 15 years from now? Contemporaneous, meaning it was recorded right when the activity happened. Original, the very first recording. Accurate, true and complete. Complete, as in no missing pages anywhere. And finally, consistent. The data doesn't contradict itself. You literally apply this to every single document you touch.
That brings us to Section 4, Bridging Source and EDC, Translating the Patient Visit.
During this phase, the CRC kind of becomes a translator. Their job is to accurately transfer the physical, real-world events of a patient visit into the sponsor's digital database. And to maintain absolute fidelity, CRCs meticulously organize all their evidence into 2 incredibly sacred binders. On one side, you have the regulatory binder. This is the big picture. It tells the story of how the trial is approved and run. It holds the protocols, IRB approvals, delegation logs, the whole shebang.
On the other side, you've got the study binder. This tells the story of what happened to one specific individual subject. It's packed with their signed consent forms, their source documents, and their entire visit history.
So we've got our study binder loaded with pristine, Alcoa-compliant source documents. But that begs the question, how do we actually get the data off that paper and into the database? Well, the online database that sponsors use is called the Electronic Data Capture System, or EDC. But remember that golden rule we talked about? You can only enter data into the EDC that actually exists on a source document. No guessing, no relying on memory. If it isn't in the source, it doesn't go in.
To execute this without a hitch, our sources recommend this brilliant, super practical tip called the triangulation method. When a CRC sits down to enter data, they need to have three things open in front of them simultaneously: the EDC screen, the actual physical source document right next to it, and the study protocol or schedule of assessments for context. It's like a giant puzzle. You're carefully translating the raw story from the source documents into the very strict, standardized digital format of the EDC.
Let's look at Section 5, Navigating Data Queries, Perfecting the Record.
Now, even if you're a master of the triangulation method, a trial monitor or data manager is probably going to issue a query. Basically, they're asking for clarification or a correction about some data you entered. The biggest mindset shift for a CRC here is framing these queries not as criticisms of their work, but as collaborative tools to get the data sparkling clean. So, when a query pops up, CRCs use a really specific 5-step resolution process. First, locate the original physical source document. Second, verify the fact. What does the paper actually say? Third, based on what you see, decide if you need to confirm the EDC value is correct, or if you actually need to fix an error you made. Fourth, update the EDC if needed. And fifth, respond to the query with a rock-solid justification. You never ever change data in the EDC without documenting exactly why in the source.
Let me give you a quick example. Say you entered some data that's technically correct, but looks a bit weird, like an unusually high blood pressure reading. A seasoned CRC might respond to the query like this: value confirmed for source document. PI is aware and assessed as an expected finding per protocol. No action required. Do you see how factual, neutral, and totally source-based that is? It's just perfect. It maintains a completely transparent audit trail, which is exactly what auditors want to see.
Finally, Section 6, Principal Investigator Oversight, the ultimate accountability.
To really grasp the macro-level oversight of a clinical trial, we have to look at the CRC's partnership with the principal investigator, or PI. See, while the CRC is the operational engine running the day-to-day show, the PI is the one holding the ultimate accountability. And the boundaries of this partnership are incredibly strict. The PI is exclusively responsible for all medical judgments, like assessing adverse events to decide if a participant can safely stay in the trial, and signing the major regulatory documents, like the FDA Form 1572. Those duties absolutely cannot be delegated. The CRC, meanwhile, tackles all the delegated operational stuff, conducting the actual visits, doing the data entry, scheduling, and keeping those source documents absolutely pristine.
Because the PI is on the hook for making sure the whole trial follows the protocol and good clinical practice guidelines, they have to prove they are actively supervising things. If an auditor walks in, they're going straight for the FDA 1572 form signed by the PI. They're going to check the delegation of authority log to see exactly who is allowed to do what. And they'll look for hard evidence of ongoing PR review, meaning they want to see the PI signature and date on source records, screening checklists, and case report forms. It's the ultimate proof that the PI is actively involved in protecting patient safety.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a really powerful thought drawn straight from the source material. The everyday work of a clinical research coordinator is actually described as a profound act of optimism. It's built on this belief that a correctly labeled vial, a perfectly filled out form, and a deeply understood consent discussion today will all eventually coalesce into the knowledge that cures a disease tomorrow. So think about it. How might your meticulous attention to detail today help cure a disease tomorrow? It's an absolutely massive responsibility and such an essential part of crafting the future of medicine. Thanks so much for diving into this with me.